suit on, all right? The same one I wear every time. It's the only suit I have.
Ready, Mayor?
All right, so now I'm going to call the meeting to order for the June 24th study session. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
May the record reflect that all council members are present, excluding the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Molly. Welcome to the team, our interim city clerk. So interim for us, but you've been doing this for a long time, so we're excited to have you as part of our team. Okay, current business. Will now proceed to our current business. The first item is clarification on items on the consent calendar. Councilmember Weigand, do you need clarification regarding any items on consent calendar?
No, I do not.
Councilmember Bartow?
I do not.
Councilmember Grant?
None.
Councilmember Blanc?
I have none, thank you.
Councilmember Weber?
None.
Mayor Pro Tem absent. Myself, none as well. Okay. So the next item is preparing for the implementation of advanced air mobility. I don't know, City Manager Grace. Oh, our Assistant City Manager Tara Finnegan, do you want to help kick this off? Okay, terrific.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We are here tonight to talk with you for the first time about advanced air mobility, which is a rapidly developing transportation system that is comprised of emerging technologies like delivery drones and air taxis. We have been studying this at the staff level for a couple of years, but after talking with Peter Kirsch, who's the consultant to my right, Peter is a renowned aviation attorney who has kindly offered to work with us on what it looks like to prepare the city for the future local implementation of advanced air mobility. We don't expect this to happen right away. We think it's about at least 2 to 5 years away, but there are certain aspects of this that the city should be looking at, particularly regulatory and zoning code issues. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter for his presentation. And
good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I would like to tell you that I'm going to give you some good, simple answers to the issue of advanced air mobility, but I'll give you the conclusion and then come back, which is there are no simple answers. With any new technology, with any disruptive technology, there are more questions than there are answers. And part of the purpose today is to educate you so you know what questions to ask and think about from a policy perspective as the city moves forward with addressing the consequences. So let's talk, if we can, momentarily about what advanced air mobility is. The FAA considers this to be the new era of aviation. It's a transportation system composed of new types of aircraft, infrastructure, and regulations. In essence, it's just a brand new type of transportation. It happens to use the air like aircraft, but it's very, very different. So let's go through a couple of definitions to start out, just to make sure we're talking about the same things. Unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, we love abbreviations in this world, by the way. Those are drones. So the little things that go around that your kids have and fly around, those are drones, also called unmanned aircraft systems. eVTOL, or electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, are air taxis, and that's really what we're going to be talking about mostly here, are the electrified aircraft that can take off literally vertically like a helicopter. The infrastructure where these aircraft fly to and from are called vertiports. They are in many respects like a heliport, but it's a special area designed for these aircraft, designed for the particular needs of these aircraft that are different than the aircraft that fly out of airports and different than helicopters as well. And you've probably seen all the kinds of pictures of air taxis. There are lots of different models that are in the exploratory stage, the early development stage, but they're all fairly similar in that they are small aircraft. They tend to have seating for anywhere from 2 to 8 people, rarely much larger than that, so that they can take advantage of very lightweight. So what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is what the current regulatory structure is, so you understand what the proper role of a city is in this context, and how that fits into the bigger structure. Just a brief, if you will, technological update. The initial test vehicles are now in operation. You've probably seen articles in the newspaper about the test operations in a couple of places at Marina Airport near Monterey. In New York City, there have been some tests. There have been some tests in Florida. but these are not passenger operations yet. The administration and the industry believes that commercial vehicles may be available within 24 months. Count me as skeptical on that, but there's a lot of pressure to bring these to the marketplace in time for the LA Olympics in 2028. We heard that there was a real plan to bring them to market in time for FIFA World Cup, and that hasn't happened. So 2028 may be ambitious, but it's not out of the question, particularly because there are a lot of these test vehicles. And there are two impediments. One is the actual vehicles themselves, and the other is the regulatory structure. How do we deal with them? How do they fly? So let me start with some basic legal principles that I think are important to understand how AAM will integrate into other transportation systems in the United States. First and most importantly is that the Federal Aviation Administration has plenary authority over airspace and the regulation of aircraft. In essence, what that means is once one of these aircraft is off the ground, it is subject to the regulation of the FAA and only the FAA. So in answer to your questions, no, you cannot regulate where they fly. No, you can't regulate how high they fly. No, you can't regulate when they fly, once they're off the ground. Okay? When it comes to the authority on the ground, there is shared authority between the FAA and the owner of the airport. And local zoning cannot regulate aeronautical land uses once an airport or a vertiport is established. And that's really important to understand. It's the establishment of a vertiport that creates federal jurisdiction. And the reason that we're talking about this here today is that before the city begins to consider establishing vertiports, you need to decide what the conditions are. Under what conditions will you allow vertiports? Because once they're allowed, then they're subject to federal regulation. So federal law does not preempt local land use regulations concerning the establishment of vertiports in the first instance. So if you want to put conditions on how they're used, you've got to do that before they exist. And that's really important to understand and really important for why we're talking about this today, potentially a couple years before these vehicles are in place. Because if someone comes in and says, I just want a little vertiport, just a small one, once they have a vertiport, your ability to regulate becomes very, very limited. So we don't know exactly what the legal structure is going to be for AAM because these vehicles are so new, but someone described this as sort of the horseless carriage approach for those of you who are even older than me. When automobiles first came about, they tried to regulate them the way they regulated horse-drawn carriages. And they tried to make the size of the roads, the speed, how they yielded or didn't yield based on horse-driven carriages, and discovered pretty quickly that mechanism wasn't so good. And the reason I make that analogy here is that the current regulatory system for airports may not work for these vehicles because of their flexibility. So there are really a couple different ways in which the federal government is looking at regulating. One is the operations. That is, how are these vehicles going to fit into the existing operation of aircraft and helicopters and so on. The vehicles themselves, the AAM, have to be licensed the way aircraft are certified. And that's another whole process. Pilots. How are pilots going to be regulated? The current technology is designed to be autonomous, but for public acceptance purposes, they will all be piloted in the early years. Even though the pilots will probably just sit there and read a book, they are going to be piloted technically. And then finally, the facilities, which is what we really is concern of you. So there are two different regulatory paths that we're going down today. One has to do with the vehicles that I've talked about and the facilities. And both are evolving slowly. The federal government has spent very little time or energy looking at the facilities themselves. They spent a lot of time on the pilots, a lot of time on the vehicles, but not on the facilities as the vertiports. So, what are the unknowns as we work into this new realm of aircraft? One is, are they going to fly below 500 feet? And that's a very important number because the federal government regulates flight above 500 feet, and it has very little regulation below 500 feet. That's why, for example, drones that your kids may use have to stay below 400 feet, so they stay out of the navigable airspace. What flight tracks are these going to use? Are they going to follow arterial roads the way helicopters, in quotes, are supposed to do? They don't. But they're supposed to follow the arterials. Are they going to follow whole new sets of tracks, or are they going to follow the same tracks as aircraft? We don't know the answer to that. What's the business model going to be for AAM? And this is pretty important because there are different models that the proponents are proposing. One is what I'll call sort of a short haul flight, say from Newport Beach to San Francisco or Newport Beach to San Diego. There's another model that's more like the Uber, which is from one part of Newport Beach to another. And that's really important to understand because the facilities that you need are very different if you're going to be going from one neighborhood to another, that is, you want to land in somebody's neighborhood, or if you're going to go from one city to another. And I think both of those business models are going to exist, but how they are going to be integrated is going to be hard. So as I said, the federal focus has thus far been largely on the airspace and the vehicles, pilots, and safety, and very little attention to the facilities. Now, that's good news and bad news. The good news about that is that means the feds haven't yet told you what you can do. The bad news is the feds haven't yet told you how to do it. And so what it means is that to a large extent, whether it's Newport Beach or other cities are having to invent for themselves what is it we would like for facilities in our city. What kinds of facilities? Where do we want them? How big do we want them? What requirements do we have? So as a result, local governments can regulate when, where, how, and whether vertiports are established at all. And as I said, once the vertiport is established, the local authority becomes very limited. And so you don't have a lot of guidance to go on here. There have been some pretty good academic papers that have been written about siting of vertiports and what the facility should look like. You see even in these pictures, which admittedly are AI generated, that these aircraft can land on the roof of a Walmart. And you can also have more like a facility that has 10 or 15 of these at one location. So when it comes to the power of local governments like the city of Newport Beach, you have power over the zoning and the land use that establishes these facilities. And you need to consider in exercising that power what the impacts are going to be of allowing these facilities. You can start from one position, which is no, never, will never allow them. That's the horseless carriage approach. We're always going to have horses and carriages. We don't have to worry about cars. Or you can say we are going to allow them, but we're going to regulate where they can be. You're going to need to look at things like noise and the economic development implications. Very seriously, you're going to need to look at the infrastructure needs, electricity in particular, power and power and power. These require an enormous amount of electricity, and that's going to be a huge burden on the system. And it's important for the city to look at what are called the use cases. How will these things be used? And what kind of use case do you want to accommodate in the city? If you want to have a hub for these, for people who want to go back and forth to San Francisco and back and forth to San Diego, that's going to be a very different kind of vertiport than if you want a neighborhood vertiport that allows you to go from one neighborhood to a shopping center and back. And whether you want to accommodate packages and cargo versus whether you want to focus on passengers. And these are just examples of sort of the different ways in which vertiports are established as a hub or on top of a building or in the middle of a neighborhood. As I say, there's been considerable professional literature written about vertiport design guidelines from an engineering and planning perspective, but very little about what the impacts are and what you might want to do as a municipality. So the question is, where do you start? And I would argue that what you want to do is first think about what kind of use cases do you want to accommodate in the city, and how do you want to accommodate those use cases. So when it comes to zoning, do you want to have a special use or special exception principle that says they're prohibited except? Do you want to have specific districts? I mean, in my pictures here, do you want to allow them to land on the elementary school playground or not? Do you want them to land in cul-de-sacs on a residential street or not? Do you want to have setbacks and mitigation? What are the environmental consequences? Remembering that you can't control the operations once you establish them. So if you say we are going to allow vertiports on elementary school playgrounds, and that's obviously an extreme example, then you're going to have to allow aircraft to land on elementary school playgrounds. And same thing with any of the other use cases. So you really are establishing a precedent for how the city is going to see these vehicles in your city based upon how you decide to site them. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the various siting and local land use considerations, but there are many that you need to think about, just like you would cite any other major public facility. Many of these, we don't know what the impacts are. We can speculate, and we've got some good scientific literature, but there aren't a lot of examples yet of how they're going to operate. So let me just leave with a couple of takeaway questions to consider. The first is a when question. And largely this is, do you want to be prepared for the eventuality that AAM is going to be coming to Southern California? Is that going to be in 2 years? Is that going to be in 3 years? I can't tell you, but it's probably less than 5. And do your existing ordinances allow the kind of control you want over vertiports? Check your local definitions, heliport, airport, and so on. Do you want to adapt those either to be more or less generous for whether you're going to want to encourage vertiports to develop? Should you have a whole new zoning category that says we're going to allow vertiports in these districts and not in others, or an overlay zone, for example? And who is going to review the technical submissions? Within city staff, do you have the expertise to say, well, we need this many feet between a heliport, between a vertiport and a house, or we need Y space between a vertiport and a school? And how much regulation is appropriate for what the city's objectives are? So that was a quick run through the basic issues. I'm happy to answer questions as council would wish.
And council members, for the sake of discussion, Aaron Harp has been very involved in this. Liz Westmoreland from our Planning Division of Community Development has already been working on this. Liz did a review of our code, and as of today, she feels that under our current code, vertiports would not be allowed in Newport Beach. So what staff is recommending, but we want to hear your input, that we leave that for now, gives us a chance to review the code, update the definitions, work with the community and our businesses, and then come back to you with some proposals on where vertiports could be sited in Newport Beach. And then there's also the drone aspect. Currently, we've been having preliminary discussions. Do we put something into effect where we look at banning drone use over, say, institutional areas like schools without permission, or over private residences, but we realize that there's some business like realtors that that's part of their business model. They would have the ability through the property owner to fly their drone over the residential area. With that aspect too, though, with drones, we would leave out commercial and industrial areas. They would still be allowed to fly where they currently do today. So there's just some thoughts to get the discussion going, how we might come back and regulate some of these uses.
Okay, terrific. Well, great presentation. Thank you for being here. Does anybody on council have any questions, comments, concerns? Pro Tem,
Thank you.
the lead
Thank
of our
you.
aviation,
Yeah, exactly.
all things Newport. Sorry.
Or you could defer to the chair. Have something you want to add? Air quotes. Thank you for the presentation. And we talked a little bit about some of these things kind of in our staff report for our last meeting, when we kind of overhauled the aviation committee in part to tackle a lot of these items that we've been talking about and anticipating for some time, out and around the county and beyond, when we are talking about the Jetson era type aircraft. Nobody really believes that they're coming, even though the industry is obviously pushing quite hard for them to be here before I think we're all ready for that. So again, really helpful presentation. I think our aviation committee is going to be well situated to start some of these discussions. I see it as kind of two-part, both reactive to the types of things that we know are going to be happening, both at John Wayne Airport and above our heads here in Newport, and then the proactive piece of, we just adopted a drone program ourselves, and we want to be able to use that to the extent that FAA will allow us. So we want to push that envelope as well. So I appreciate that we got this conversation started here. Again, I fully expect that the aviation committee will start digging into a lot of these questions. There are some public safety concerns, obviously, especially with the eVTOLs, given the battery fire issue and pieces that I think will take some time to understand. So I appreciate Tara, especially your last comment, leaving things as they are for the moment until we have a full understanding and handle on all of the moving parts. So thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Bartow.
Yes, one thing I would like us to just keep an eye on, as well as you mentioned, do we want are those drones landing on school sites, and schools are different jurisdictions, so just something to keep in mind as we move forward, because they're going to be one jurisdiction or another. How do we kind of protect that as something in the future, so we don't end up in a scenario where we have autonomous vehicles dropping kids off
Autonomous
at schools in the
kids.
future? Yeah, I'll take out
I
the
think we already have
autonomous
those.
child. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Councilmember Blon.
Thank you. And as Councilmember Kleinman said, we've spent a good amount of time on this, and I thought it was really interesting to see, even when we were out in D.C. discussing this directly. The FAA and the DOT have no idea what's actually going on. So it'd be better to get in front of this, and I think that is just an excellent recommendation. My thoughts on some of this, though, are that it might be beneficial to look to the Planning Commission to start putting forth something, maybe in an ad hoc group, where they can look at kind of the land use and rights and what that looks like from a planning code first, before we start making it aviation policy, which is not something we have a huge handle on. So if that's something that's possible, I would really like to kind of turn direction over that way. So, thank you.
Okay, good. Any other comments on council? All right, I would just echo Mayor Pro Tem Kleinman as well. I think aviation is well suited for this, and I think we do nothing for the time being and work hard to get in line with this. So that's good. Okay, terrific. We'll go to public comments on this item. Any public comments on this item? Mr. Mosier.
Thank you, Mayor Stapleton, members of the council. My name is Jim Mosier. As I think you know, you have appointed me to your General Plan Advisory Committee, which is charged with coming up or suggesting a plan for development of the city over the next 25 years. So if this is going to happen in the next 2 or 5 years, it seems important that it will be incorporated in that plan. But and actually the committee had been asking to learn more about this, and somehow we had not heard anything until today. I am not speaking as on behalf of GPAC, but just as an individual now. So I wanted to point out to people who were interested in this issue, if in the staff report at the very end, and I didn't notice that until a few minutes before the meeting, that there is a link for more information about this at the usual city website, newportbeachca.gov, and you put a / and the letters AAM after that, and it takes you to a page with links. And the very last link on that page is to a symposium that was held this spring in Palm Springs, at which our 2 presenters were present there, and there is an hour-long video of a much more in-depth presentation about this issue that people can see there. My only personal comment about this is, in addition to the safety and privacy issues we heard barely touched upon, one can anticipate there probably will be noise complaints about this, whether it's sited in our city or not, because the new aircraft will clearly be flying over us and in neighborhoods that never were exposed to aircraft noise in the past. And I think an aspect of that, before it becomes fully deployed, there's modeling that will tell people how it is, but people are being concerned, is it different now with these flying over them than it was before? And to be able to answer that question, whether it has any regulatory effect or not, I think it's really important to document what the noise environment is now, so that it can be measured 25 years from now, and people who think, oh, it's much worse, can actually get a quantitative answer. Was it really better before or worse with these? And I think that's, to me, an important aspect of this. And we might ask the county to help with that. If they can't, we could do it as a city ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker on this item. Okay, seeing none, terrific. We'll bring it back up here. Any additional comments on council? Okay. I think you've got your marching orders. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Really well informed. I guess we'll stay recessed for 5 minutes and we'll start the general meeting at 4:30. Thank you.
Because you're buying a jewelry, otherwise.
I talked to her earlier. She was a little bit like, longest day ever.
I'll call the meeting to order, the June 24th regular meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
May the record reflect that all members are present.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please read the notice regarding public comments.
The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are invited on items listed on the agenda and non-agenda items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. Thank you, Mayor.
Terrific. All right, now's the time for invocation by Ramses Rashida with Spiritual Assembly of Baha'i of Newport Beach.
O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide by thy laws. O God, grant them strength to serve thee. Leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Thank you. Councilmember Grant, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, please join me in the pledge to the flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, now is the time for a presentation on the history of Mayor Dora Hill, the unlikely architect of modern Newport Beach, and done by our very own Bill Lobdell. Bill, I'm going to do an introduction, even though you don't need one. Let me get it open. I love this one. I think Dora Hill, which you'll say, I'm sure, if there was a Mount Rushmore, she'd probably be on it. And as the mayor of the first female majority city council, I think it's fitting that we're celebrating Dora Hill this evening. So Bill Abdell is a local historian who founded the Newport Beach in the Rearview Mirror, which he produces popular videos and podcasts about the events and people, famous and forgotten, that have shaped Newport Beach. His videos have generated more than 2.5 million views on Instagram, and his podcast has nearly 40,000+ downloads. Bill's love for Newport Beach history began during his decade-long stint as the editor of the Daily Pilot. He also worked as an investigative reporter and editor for the LA Times for many years. He lives here in Corona del Mar with his beautiful bride, who is here with us tonight, his #1 cheerleader. So, Bill, let's hear about Dora Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Like you said, I think this is special because we have a female majority council, which I think Dora Hill would say great, and what took so long. All right, Dora Hill, first female mayor, and a lot more, which you'll find out. She came into here from Chicago in the community. She embraced it. She was Lido Isle resident, grandmother 3, very involved in PTA all through the school districts, different schools, Hoag Hospital, Assistant League, and she was a church volunteer. founding member of St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. They would have get-togethers at night in someone's home, the church members, founding church members, and they'd have someone talk to them about different issues in the city. So they had a city employee, I don't know who, talk to them, and he said the biggest problem with Newport Beach is corruption within the city, and especially the police department. They were not paid very well, and they had keys to the businesses to do nightly checks, and they'd go in and steal from the local businesses. So she was the ultimate church lady. This can't happen. We need to reform the city. And so they found someone to take over, to run on a reform platform. He backed out on the day of the filing. They didn't have anybody else, so Nora very reluctantly threw her hat in the ring. She was the first woman to run for city council. This is, 50 years after, half century after the city's founding. No one took her seriously. She was not a viable candidate, people thought. But she was a huge community volunteer, and she won in a landslide. She got double the number of votes of her next highest vote getter. And what happened, also, if you could see on this slide, Mrs. Edgar Hill, we're going to talk about the sexism of the day. They never referred to her as Dora Hill in the newspapers. It was Mrs. Edgar Hill or Mrs. Hill. So she won a landslide, and back then, if you were the highest vote getter, you got to be mayor. But the city council, sexist city council, didn't want a female mayor, and so they said no. And so she and a male companion got together and concocted this plan. Just tell them, Dora said, just tell them that I want to be nominated. I just want that honor. I couldn't possibly be mayor. And so he got word to the council members. First meeting, they nominated her. She immediately says, I accept. And she got to be mayor. Very stunned colleagues sat there in disbelief. This is how novel it was. This is Groucho Marx's You Bet Your Life. This is probably the most popular show back in the 50s. And she was on there, and we're going to play this if I can figure out how to do it.
Well, no, I think it's probably because I'm the mayor of Newport Beach, California.
Mayor? Well, Your Honor, we're honored to have you here. Yeah, I should imagine a lady mayor is fairly rare. Were you elected in a smoke-filled room or a perfume-filled room?
No, I was just elected in the ordinary way, and it just happens in our city, the councilman polling the largest number of votes is named mayor by the remainder of the council.
Well, you're a pretty cute-looking mayor.
Thank you.
The average mayor doesn't look that way. I've heard that you have a major problem with teenagers every year at Newport Beach. Do you have any comments to make about the gay parties that go on down there?
Well, I don't know. It seems that every year during Easter vacation, the teenagers of all Southern California think they ought to go down to Balboa, which is a part of Newport Beach. Mm-hmm. They say they go to Bal at Easter week. Mm-hmm. And our city is, we have about 18,000 in population, and they estimated that we had about 35,000 young people last year. We think that the problem wouldn't be so great if we could change this into a family week at Easter time and make it a family holiday.
Let the kids stay home and just the parents come down here?
No, we'd like the parents with the children.
Oh.
You can get a sense of what she was up against. Here is the publisher of the Newport News, the big newspaper back then. Progress brings changes and also brought Newport Beach its first mayor, lioness. Her pictures never do justice to the soft impeachment of her sparkling eyes, petal-toned cheeks, and alluring lines. I know, ooh, right? And New York Times wrote, she combines mayor duties with and housework. So she had a really tough road to hoe, but she got right to work. She did a number of things, but she got a city charter passed within a year of being elected. We got the city manager form of government, which brought us people like Grace here, and voting by district. Before then, it was very tribal, and if your area of the city got elected to council, you got the spoils, and everybody else got the leftovers. She unleashed a lot of other reforms. She immediately got the city manager and police chief fired, who were pretty corrupt, took away elected positions like the city clerk and treasurer, and ordered a salary survey, especially for the police officers, to make sure they were paid in line with other cities. So they got a big raise as well. She also, that's her main contribution. Her other thing was she killed Bow Week, which is great. Or she put a mortal blow to Bow Week. Like you heard on the video, 35,000 people swamped the city of 17,000. And so what she did is she enacted a bunch of local ordinances and policies that were completely illegal, but they stopped the teenagers. You needed a permission slip from your parents. All landlords had to file with the city a number of people they let in, roadblocks, random searches. And she went on this tour around Southern California to warn parents and teenagers not to come to Newport. So she didn't kill it totally. It still went on through the 60s, but she made a major dent in Bow Week. Well, here's all it is. All this, 35 police officers hired just for the summer, just for that spring break. And then all this brought her a recall campaign in typical Dora Hill fashion. She met with the people that were leaders of the recall campaign, and she said, look, you got these horde of teenagers, they're probably robbing you, blind shoplifting, blah, 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 blah. And after she got done talking to them, they withdrew the papers and she didn't get recalled. She doorstepped down from the city council in 1958. She served 4 years on the council as mayor. She went on, in a rare moment for politicians, I think, she actually wanted to spend more time with the family, and that's why she stepped down voluntarily. In 1960, she was named the first woman foreperson of the Orange County Grand Jury, and she lived in Lido, I believe, the rest of her life, and she passed away at age 83. That's the Dora Hill story. And I think, maybe I put one more. No, you could draw, my last point is, you can draw a direct line to Dora Hill's reforms and what the city is today. Professionally run, transparent. She put that all in action because it was not that way before she got there. So.
I think we have a special guest here this afternoon as well.
Yes, I wanted to mention that we actually have the legacy of Mayor Dora Hill going on even today in our city. We've got her grandson, Mark Maury. Mark, you might want to raise your hand or stand up or something. And do you have another family guest with you? That's just a friend. Okay. So Mark is Dora's grandson and lives here on the peninsula, right? And runs a business, a shipyard business, I believe. And so it's welcome, pleasure to have you here. And I'll just mention, it is difficult to sit here next to Mayor Stapleton and his alluring lines, but somebody has to do it. So between
this
me
can be
and
reversed, I guess.
and Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, we're the buffers.
Fair enough.
Welcome, Mark and guest.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you for being here. What a legacy the city's in. And Bill, I think it's relevant to say that she made the cutoff by 7 minutes, right, to file for council. It was like a noon deadline, and I think she filed like 11:53. So it's pretty remarkable where the city would be today if she hadn't made that deadline and hadn't become the mayor of Newport. So I think that's been my favorite one so far. If you guys are unfamiliar, as the mayor, my thing is all about the history of the city of Newport Beach. So we're talking about the people and the projects, past, present, and future. And we're in the 1950s today with Dora Hill, who created his charter city in 1954. So thank you, Mr. Bill Abdel, for all you do for the city. That was well done. Okay, now on to my exciting things. Oh, that's great. Now's the time for council announcements or reports from council members on committee activities, and the time for council members to request an A1 item to be placed on a future agenda. Councilmember Wygan, do you have any announcements or reports?
None today.
Just vacation. Okay, good deal. Councilmember Bartow.
Just that we met I met with Councilmember Grant on the Ad hoc Refuse Committee to figure out how to decrease some of our numbers that we need to decrease for commercial trash and source separation, and had a bike safety working group meeting today.
Terrific. Councilmember Grant.
A few announcements. This last couple weeks, I was fortunate enough to attend with our city manager, Grace Long, and other members of our staff, the Association of California Cities of Orange County Golden Hub Awards, and we were a winner. Congratulations to our city for winning the Technology-Driven Transparent Government Excellence Award. That went to the Community Development Department for the Newport Beach ADU Accessory Dwelling Units website initiative. So bravo to them, they're winners. And then we had a further recognition, our city staff leader of the year recognition for Sean Levin, and that was for the community safety and resiliency for the AED initiative in Newport Beach public spaces. And that's, I guess, equipment that we're installing in parks that helps to revive somebody's heart. And that's really been a benefit for our coaches and other, users in the park. So congratulations to both community development and recreation and senior services and winning those recognitions. And then I wanted to mention that we had 2 events relating to our library here in the city. The Friends of the Library had their annual lunch right here in the community room. It was a great event, very heartfelt. And these are the little engine that could people. They gave us a check for $250,000 to the library, and they really just get that money through selling books that are donated $1 at a time. So you can imagine how much hard work goes into that with that group. So thank you to the Friends of the Library. And then the Library Foundation also had in our community room the Summer Solstice New Member Celebration, where they honored Karen Clark for her years of service to the Newport Beach Public Library. So I wanted to just thank Karen and the Library Foundation for all the good work they do. And you can see in the pictures the nice check. That's the Friends of the Library Board, and of course, Karen Clark. Thank you.
Well done. $250,000. Big deal. Yeah. All right. Councilmember Blum?
Nothing.
Councilmember Weber?
I just want to say thank you to, what?
Just kidding.
Thank you to everyone who came to Flag Day, and thank you to Public Works and PB&R and the volunteers from the police department who helped set up all of the flags, and they are up at the lawn through the 4th, so make sure to go check them out.
Yeah, that's really cool to see. Thank you for your heart of service with the Exchange Club and everyone else who put that together. And happy to see they're still out there. Oh, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Kleinman.
No report.
No report. Mine will be brief. I just want to congratulate the Ben Carlson Foundation. The Ben did go paddle. They had their first qualifier last Saturday. We had 54 individuals go out and paddle the 15 miles required, and I think all but 7 qualified. So it's the first of many qualifiers. So I did qualify, if you're curious, so that was good. That's my second official qualifier. One more to go. All ready for September 13th to make the journey across the Pacific Ocean from Catalina to Newport Pier, 30 miles. So what a great cause. It is appropriate to say that Ben Carlson, I think it was 11 years ago on July 6th when Newport Beach turned a tragedy into a legacy. So it's a great group of individuals that are out there celebrating the legacy of Ben Carlson. So well done. And then it's Mr. Irrelevant Week in Newport Beach. So starting, I think, on Thursday, and also Friday, we've got Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick, the final pick in the NFL draft. Paul Salata started this tradition and quoted on saying, "Why did you start this? Because I want to do something nice for somebody for no reason at all." So it is pretty cool. I know there's a lot of activities, so go Google Mr. Irrelevant Week and you'll find information on it. But Melanie Salata, Paul's daughter, is doing a lot of work on that. So it's a great way to celebrate Newport Beach in the year that we're in today, or this year. So with that, let's go to public comments on consent calendar items. Let's go. Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the notice regarding public comments on the consent calendar.
This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Thank you, Mayor.
Well done, Madam Clerk. All right, Councilmember Weigand, do you have any items to pull from the consent calendar or conflicts to announce related to items 1 through 22?
I have none.
Okay, Councilmember Bartow?
None.
Councilmember Grant?
None.
Councilmember Blom?
I have none.
Councilmember Weber?
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman?
I have none.
I have none myself. Do we have a motion?
I move the consent calendar and noting an amendment to item number 1 minutes.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Councilmember Grant seconds. We will now have public comments on consent calendar items 1 through 22. Mr. Mosier.
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. In connection with items 3, 4, and 5 on the consent calendar, I believe our interim clerk is about to read the titles to a number of ordinances. For her benefit, if one looks very closely at Charter Section 412, I believe you'll find it's only required to read the titles of the ordinances on the night they're being approved and finally adopted, which is tonight for all of these ordinances. But I would commend our former city clerk for also reading the titles on the night that the ordinances are introduced so people will know that they are coming up. I think ordinances are very important. That said, one of the titles is from number 3 is very long. One from number 5 is a little bit shorter. I don't think anybody hearing all of those words of the very long title of the ordinance would guess that this is approving very substantial changes to the landscape in Newport Center, right across the street from where we are sitting today. And it will allow much bigger buildings at locations that currently are constrained to low heights. I am surprised you've not received a lot of correspondence about the approval of these ordinances, but I think if what they allow actually happens, you will have a lot of constituents or a future city council's constituents wondering when that got approved and why. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on consent calendar items? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back here. Any additional comments on council? All right, seeing none, let's vote.
And prior to announcing the vote, Mayor, if I could read the ordinance
Please.
titles?
Yep.
2025-7, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, California, approving an amendment to the Newport North Center Plan Community, PC-56, Development Plan to allocate 1,500 base dwelling units from the HO-4 Newport Center area, sub-area development limits set forth in Section 20.28.050, Housing Opportunity HO overlay zoning districts of the Newport Beach Municipal Code to the North Newport Center Plan Community, PC 56, Development Plan for 100 and 190 Newport Center Drive and various addresses within the North Newport Center Plan Community, PA 2024-0173, and number 2025-8, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, California, approving a second amendment to Development Agreement Number DA 2007-002, entitled Zoning, Implementation, and Public Benefit Agreement for the project located at 100 and 190 Newport Center Drive and various addresses within the Newport North Center Plan Community, PA 2024-0173. Ordinance number 2025-9, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, California, adding 12.70 prohibition on attending street races and reckless driving exhibitions to Title 12, Vehicles and Traffic of the Newport Beach Municipal Code. 2025-10, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, California, amending Section 20.28.050, Housing Opportunity HO Overlay Zoning Districts in Title 20, Planning and Zoning of the Newport Beach Municipal Code related to implementation of the housing element PA 2024-0205.
That's all.
Motion passes 7-0.
Very nice. Well done. Okay, public comments on non-agenda items. We'll now ask for public comments on non-agenda items.
Good evening, Adam Leverance. I had some slides I submitted. I hope they can be called up as I get started. If you'll recall at the last meeting, I shared concerns about the change of harbor service workers to harbor safety officers. The mayor and the finance director gave some assurances that these wouldn't be sworn officers, leading to the 4 times the pension amounts we talked about at the last meeting. I felt comforted as I left City Hall that night, but the following night there was a Harbor Commission meeting, which I left feeling less comforted. The deputy harbor master had some slides up starting with this. He talked about speeding enforcement, and quoting him from that meeting on the 11th, he said, "The biggest challenge is that we have limited police powers. We steer away from conducting traffic stops as sworn police officers would do, so our focus is mostly on conducting brief consensual encounters with boaters." He continued to talk about the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit of the harbor, making it so they can't chase people and that they get away. That sounds like something different than a consensual encounter to me. Then if you could move to the next slide. He followed that up with what we also talked about at the last meeting was post-training, which is peace officer standards and training. And some of the things the deputy harbor master said is we're going to focus on staff training, move from just traditional code enforcement to specialized enforcement issues. We want to ensure that our staff, and not just the code enforcement officers, but every member of the department has the necessary training to effectively enforce sections of the code, Title 17, Harbors and Navigation Code, California regulations, and a few other sections. And then the next slide, he listed some coursework, and the top course is the laws of arrest. And people wondered why former harbor surface workers, now harbor safety officers, are being educated on the laws of arrest. And then, as most of you know, the Harbor Patrol, the sheriff's office, used to do law enforcement. They still do law enforcement in the harbor. In 2017, that cost $313,000. The city for fiscal year 2024 cost $2.5 million. About $414,000 of that is pay and benefits for the harbor master and the deputy harbor master. And given, again, these aren't going to be apparently sworn officers, but it seems like the addition to red lights on the harbor department patrol boats are kind of leading somewhere that is both fiscally concerning, training concerning, and why have the city fund a parallel law enforcement agency? Just things I hope you think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Katie Smith, and I was here on April 15th on behalf of the Environmental Nature Center. I'm also the person who started the community petition to protect the land at 1501 East 16th Street. Since then, the community has reorganized and launched a nonprofit, a 501c4, focused on ensuring the long-term well-being of this space. We are guided by respected advisors like Terry Watt, Paolo Perrone, and Nancy Gardner, and we've aligned around a clear goal, a conservation sale at fair market value. Our vision is to see the nature preserve expanded into the adjacent lot, not only to protect native species and open space, but to provide more room for Newport Beach families to explore, connect, and learn. Many don't realize the Environmental Nature Center is open to the public every Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 3. It's not just a place for kids, although they thrive there. It's a vibrant part of our community. In the summertime, you'll find ENC campers there, building fairy houses, learning about tide pools, and finding awe in nature. This land has already been serving Newport Beach for generations, quietly and with care. We understand development pressures, But we also believe this is a rare opportunity for the city to help preserve something truly irreplaceable. We are working hard through donors, grants, and public outreach to make a conservation sale possible, but we can't do it alone. We ask the city to publicly support a conservation outcome at fair market value and to help us identify solutions that protect what makes Newport Beach special. And to anyone here tonight, please come visit the ENC this weekend, see the magic for yourself, walk the trails, imagine what it would mean to expand this experience for generations to come. And if you are looking for a great reason to stop by, the ENC is hosting a wine walk this Saturday, 4 to 7. And if you guys are looking to want to attend, I'd be happy to get your ticket on me. It's a beautiful way to experience what we're working on and so hard to protect. So thank you.
Thank you. I think I got Councilmember Blum's attention with the wine walk. Well done. Any other public comments on non-agenda items?
Hello everyone, my name is Miles Patricola. Happy Pride Month. Harvey Milk was the first openly gay person to be elected to public office in California. He served our country in the Navy for 5 years during the Korean War and was forced out of the Navy for being gay. He was a civil rights activist who fought against housing and employment discrimination, and he fought against discrimination in public schools. Harvey Milk was a leader of the gay rights movement in San Francisco, and he was murdered in 1978 in a political assassination. His killer was released from prison after serving less than 8 years for killing both Harvey and the mayor of San Francisco. Since then, Harvey's name has become a symbol of progress. Schools, public centers, and streets are enshrined with his name. California celebrates Harvey Milk Day on May 22nd. He was portrayed by Sean Penn in an Oscar-winning film and posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Barack Obama. In recognition of Milk's years in service to our country and his place of honor in our history, the United States Navy announced that a Naval Fleet oiler would be christened the USNS Harvey Milk in 2021. 3 weeks ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the Navy to remove Milk's name from that ship. A Pentagon spokesperson claimed this decision reflects, quote, the Commander-in-Chief's priorities, our nation's history, and the warrior ethos. 2 weeks ago, the federal government deployed the National Guard to Los Angeles without the consent of California's governor or the mayor of LA. Military force was used not to protect but to posture for Trump's political benefit. The priorities of the current administration are spiteful, intolerant, ignorant, vile, and they aren't shy about it. They are boastful. This administration is fixated on encouraging hate and promoting discrimination. They are demonizing the LGBTQIA+ community. They are blaming DEI for plane crashes. And they are deporting Hispanic military veterans and young Hispanic children with cancer. I attended a local meeting last week, and a member of the Hispanic community in Costa Mesa was invited to speak about the consequences of the ICE raids targeting her and her loved ones. She explained that in addition to being targeted and terrorized for their race and ethnicity, in addition to being denied due process and detained inside inhumane detention facilities, and in addition to being dehumanized as illegals, just to justify the inhumanity of the current administration's crusade against people with brown skin. She explained that many of the primary providers for Hispanic families have been abducted by ICE, leaving their loved ones without the means to pay for food. She fought back tears while asking members of the audience to donate canned food and other basic goods to help traumatized children. I blame each of you for enabling this nightmare, and I will continue to blame you when it gets worse. You promoted Trump by wearing his MAGA hat. When your constituents spread election lies and conspiracies, you were silent.
Are you almost done?
A little bit more here. You can't erase the history of my country and the proud legacy of Harvey Milk by renaming a boat. You will never remove the Hispanic community from California. You won't silence the patriots who are standing up to advocate for the people you want to erase from our history and our society. We will never let hate win. This is what democracy looks like. Happy Pride Month.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back here. Good to go. We'll go into public hearings. We're now going to the public hearing items. Item 23 is the 2025 Drinking Water Quality Report on Public Health Goals. Does anyone need a staff report on this? Nope. Okay, thank you. I don't think we need one. Any questions or comments by council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll now open the public hearing. Any public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. If there are no more public comments, I will close the public hearing. Any additional council comments or questions?
I'll make a motion to approve that and thank Mark and his team for the quality water that they're delivering to our residents.
I think this is a receive and file, so we don't need a
Yeah, if
we
it's
don't
just
need a
received,
motion.
never mind, I retract that.
But I think kudos to our utilities
Yeah, I think
director.
I can pontificate on this for quite some time if we want to, but, you know, we have a good partnership with OCWD and the city, so I appreciate the hard work.
Okay, well done. So we're receive and file. Thank you. Anything else? We're good? Okay. Next item, number 24, relates to the collection of certain sewer and recycling fees. Again, do we need a report on this? No? Okay, great. Any council members have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the next step. We'll open the public hearing. Any public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Any additional comments or questions by council members? Mr. Wygan, do you want to make a motion on this one?
Yeah, I'm feeling saucy. Let's do it. I'll make the motion.
How about kudos to staff for their hard work?
It's not water. It's not as
Okay.
fun. So, no, kudos.
Well, I'll thank staff for their hard work on this. Do I have a second? Okay, Councilmember Weber, seconds. Discussion, let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, well done. We'll now move to current business. Item number 25 relates to the appointment to scheduled and unscheduled board and commission vacancies. Do any council members have any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Mosier had written some comments that did seem to make some sense because one of the applicants did apply, and our policy does say that 2 applicants have to be presented per position. So there looked like there was only 7 in the Arts Commission, and there were, since somebody withdrew, only 1 for the Library of Trustees. So just kind of like to hear maybe staff explain if we have to waive our policy, if we can do that from here, if we have to repost it. It seems like those 2 are the only potential hang-ups.
My understanding, there wasn't another candidate for at least one of those positions, the Arts Commission, and I'm not sure when the person withdrew for the Board of Library Trustees, but there was 2 initially.
There were.
I think you're within the policy, but to the extent you could just move forward now, you'll be waiving any policy that would be applicable to that situation.
Because I think even in his comments, it did mention that in the past practice was we went to a previous commissioner if there wasn't enough to fulfill the recommendation. Is that?
Well, you can nominate anybody you want. So if you.
But that was last meeting, not this meeting, right?
Yeah. Well, you're still open to consider somebody besides on the list.
Right, right. And I don't have anyone. I just wanted to make sure we were, upholding our rules and policies correctly. But
Yeah,
if
it
you're-
seems like it's kind of an impossibility type thing. You didn't have enough people put in for some of this, and so you're moving forward because of that. And then you didn't know at the time when this moved forward that someone was going to withdraw. So I think you're within the policy, but I think to the extent you feel that not by taking action tonight, you're waiving the policy.
And then as far, I guess I just would ask then the ad hoc, because I wasn't on it, but if there's only 7, were there only 7 applications for the
That's my
arts?
recollection. We put up everybody that, since we had 2 resignations.
For the arts?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Maybe moving forward, we should just clarify that in the code that if there, that you have 2 for each unless there aren't 2 there, because maybe we just clarify it with a single sentence at some point, not now, not tonight.
Okay. All right. Do we need to go to public comments before we vote, or do we want to vote?
Yeah, I think you take public comment from everybody before you.
Okay. Let's go to no more council comments. Okay, great. Mr. Mosier, public comments on this item?
Yes, I do not know about the City Arts Commission. I didn't ask to look for the folder of that. So I do not know if it's true that there were only 7 applications. I can tell you for a fact that it is not true of the Board of Library Trustees. There are additional applications. So it is not an impossibility to have more than one nominee for this position. I know that I have had my own application in there since 2009, and the fact that I've not been nominated doesn't mean that I'm not available to be nominated. And I don't know how many other applications there may be there. And there is absolutely no urgency about making that appointment tonight. So I think the prudent thing to do, since you do have a policy and you didn't announce that you might be waiving that policy, is to ask the Appointments Committee to reevaluate this and come up with the required 2 nominees so that you have an actual choice to make tonight, and the choice has not been made by the Appointments Committee. Otherwise, the committee made the choice and the council as a whole cannot do anything about it. Doesn't seem right. And again, there is no urgency because the charter does not require the appointment to be made tonight. The incumbent will remain in that position until you make the appointment. And when this happened 10 years ago, it actually took, I think, a month for the appointment to be made, and it didn't cause any disruption. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just real quickly, the council policy actually does say, if there are available candidates. So I think with the Arts Commission, there wasn't another available candidate. And with the library, with that one, you did bring forward 2 people, and she withdrew after basically the agenda, was out. So I don't think there's an issue here with the council policy, but you're always free to push it if you'd like to.
Understood, yeah. I think we'll keep it the way it is.
Adam Leverins again, speaking to the 2 vacancies on Harbor Commission. I'm going to read a number of things quoted from the City of Newport Beach Tide and Submerged Lands Annual Financial Report for the year ending June 30, 2024. Quote, "The City of Newport Beach manages and administers the tidelands on behalf of all the people of California and is subject to specific legislative grants. The tidelands within the city's boundaries are owned by the state of California and overseen by the California State Lands Commission. Some of the lands are administered by the County of Orange, but still are owned by the state. The city, as a trustee, is required to submit an annual financial report to the State Lands Commission. Additionally, the public trust doctrine in the California Constitution advise the city. The public trust doctrine says that the legislature has the power to delegate the management responsibility of tidelands and submerged lands to local governments. When it does so, these lands are known as granted lands, and the grantees that manage them must ensure that they are used in ways that are consistent with the public trust and with any other conditions the legislature imposes. The state constitution, Article 16, Section 6, says that the legislature shall have no power to make any gift or authorize the making of any gift of any public money or thing of value to any individual, municipal, or other corporation." Close quote. Under the law, the city cannot own the harbor. However, the incumbent harbor commissioner seeking reinstatement tonight states on his application, quote, "I believe that our city owns and operates the most beautiful harbor on the West Coast." Close quote. With 6 years of tenure, according to his letter, do you think he didn't read the Tide and Submerged Lands annual financial reports, didn't read the Beacon Bay Bill, the granting statutes or applicable provisions of the state constitution? Thinking the city owns the harbor has contributed to multiple time-consumptive, costly, and controversial ideas coming out of the Harbor Commission, ideas which have eventually failed or been dismissed. You now have opportunity to show which of you prioritize improvement in process and a lesser waste of time and tax dollars, or an incumbent stating severely inaccurate perceptions about owning the harbor and maintaining the status quo. I hope that you'll appoint people that realize the city doesn't own the harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, let's vote.
And as a reminder, the applicants do have to receive 4 votes to be appointed.
Okay, terrific. That's all of them.
That's everyone.
That's everyone.
Yeah, I voted for everybody. Yeah. All right, so the first vote's going to be for Board of Library Trustees.
Thank you. There is one vacancy. So Councilmember Weigand has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. Councilmember Bartow has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. Councilmember Grant has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. Councilmember Blum has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. Councilmember Weber has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman has voted for Timothy Chase Reef. And Mayor Stapleton has made that unanimous. Timothy Chase Reef is appointed.
Well done, Chase.
Next, for Building and Fire Board of Appeals, it's a vote for 2. Councilmember Weigand has voted for Charles Allen and Kenneth Bondi. Councilmember Bartow has voted Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Councilmember Grant, Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Councilmember Blum, Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Councilmember Weber, Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Mayor Stapleton, Charles Allen, Kenneth Bondi. Those 2 are appointed to serve on the board.
Okay.
Moving on to the City Arts Commission. Councilmember Weigand has voted for, it's a vote for 4, David Anastos, Rita Goldberg, Melissa Kendall, Laurel Tippett. Councilmember Bartow has voted for David Anastos, Melissa Kendall, Tara Megan, Laurel Tippett. Councilmember Grant has voted for David Anastos, Rita Goldberg, Melissa Kendall, Laurel Tippett. Councilmember Blum voted for David Anastas, Melissa Kendall, Tara Megan, Laurel Tippett. Councilmember Weber, David Anastos, Melissa Kendall, Tara Megan, Laurel Tippett. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, David Anastos, Rita Goldberg, Tara Megan, Laurel Tippett. Mayor Stapleton, David Anastos, Rita Goldberg, Melissa Kendall, Tara Megan, Laurel Tippett. And the appointees are David Anastos, Melissa Kendall, Tara Megan, and Laurel Tippett. Now we will move on to the Civil Service Board. Councilmember Weigand, Paul Meyer. Councilmember Bartow, Paul Meyer. Councilmember Grant, Paul Meyer. Councilmember Blum, Paul Meyer. Councilmember Weber, Paul Meyer. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, Paul Meyer. Unanimous with Mayor Stapleton. He will be appointed to that board. For the Harbor Commission, vote for 2. Councilmember Weigand, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Councilmember Bartow, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Councilmember Grant, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Councilmember Blum, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Councilmember Weber, John Marlowe, Steve Scully. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Mayor Stapleton, Bob Miller, Steve Scully. Bob Miller and Steve Scully will be appointed to the Harbor Commission.
Congratulations.
Finally, not finally, we have Parks, Beaches, Recreation. Councilmember Weigand, Kira Kirby, Travis Purdy. Councilmember Bartow, Kyra Kirby, Travis Purdy. Councilmember Grant, Kyra Kirby, Travis Purdy. Councilmember Blum, Kira Kirby, Travis Purdy. Councilmember Weber, Kira Kirby, Travis Purdy. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, Kira Kirby, Travis Purdy. Mayor Stapleton makes that unanimous with those appointees for the Parks, Beach, and Recreation Commission. Now we will move into the
Planning Commission.
Vote for 2. Councilmember Weigand, Michael Casano, Greg Reed. Councilmember Bartow, Michael Casano, Greg Reed. Councilmember Grant, Michael Grazzano, Greg Reed. Councilmember Blum, Michael Gazzano, Greg Reed. Councilmember Weber, Michael Gazzano, Greg Reed. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman, Michael Gazzano, Greg Reed. Mayor Stapleton makes that unanimous. They will be appointed to the Planning Commission.
Well done. Congratulations to all that applied and were appointed. I think one of the beauties of the city of Newport Beach is we have a lot of experts that are willing to step up and serve and volunteer their time. So those of you here in the audience, thank you and look forward to your service to our community. Those of you who continue to serve and have been serving, thank you for your continued service. So with that, Madam Clerk, please read the announcement for motion for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side. Thank you.
Okay, any motions for reconsideration? Okay, seeing none, now's the time for public comments on closed session. Are there any public comments for closed session items? No? Okay. Terrific. We'll go into closed session. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session announcement?
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to meet with the city's real property negotiators, discuss negotiations with Mike Kennedy regarding the property at 2173 Orchard Drive in Newport Beach, as well as negotiations with John Saunders regarding the property located at 3848 Campus Drive, to meet with the city's labor negotiators regarding negotiations with Part-Time Employees Association of Newport Beach, as well as negotiations with the city manager and city attorney, and to meet with legal counsel regarding litigation titled Barbara Salvini versus Newport Beach. And that's all as set forth under item 19. The city manager will recuse herself from the labor negotiations that deal with her employment agreement, and as well as item 19C, based upon possible impact on her personal financial interest. And I will recuse myself from labor negotiations regarding the city attorney, as well as item 19C, based upon a possible impact on my personal financial interest. Thank you.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you. We ready to go? Okay, we're now reconvened from closed session. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no closed session report this evening.
Okay, thank you. We're now adjourned. Thank you.